Good evening, good afternoon, and welcome on in to another episode of From Day One. When last we left the courtroom because of fortunate technology issues on Saturday, we went ahead and were finished with a soft set who was trying to find a parking ticket. So, when we pick up tonight's recording, we start right with the judge letting the subset know about what he can and can't do and starting to question the particular cop.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Hood, this is your opportunity to cross-examine the witness, that is, question him about anything he's testified to. It's not yet that portion of the trial where you'll testify if you want to, but if you have questions of the officer, this would be the time to ask them.
Yes, ma'am. I do have one question of Officer Entz.
Please ask him.
Yes, ma'am. You had stated earlier that you were facing south and you were approximately 150 feet away from the intersection. If you were facing south towards Rose Hill, how did you see me not come to a stop at the intersection, which was north of you?
I positioned myself where I could watch that particular stop sign through my side and rear view mirrors on my vehicle, due to that being a stop sign that has constant issues.
Okay. I have nothing further at this time.
All right. Any further, Mr. Regier?
Nothing further from the state, Your Honor.
All right.
Okay, I'm actually surprised. I thought the guy would go crazy, but well, of course, this case isn't over, but I actually have to give him a half a point for, not going insane, at least so far. But I have a feeling he's probably going to, burn that point and probably many, many more. Let's continue.
I will. Do you have any other witnesses?
No other witnesses, Your Honor.
So the state rests?
Yes,
State rests.
Your Honor. State says that's all we need.
Mr. Hood, that means they've put all the witnesses on they're going to. Would you like to put any witness evidence in?
Yes, ma'am. I guess my question is, did the court receive my photos?
I did.
Okay.
All right, so you're going to call yourself as a witness?
Yes, ma'am.
Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Liar, liar, pants on fire. Just a hunch. But go ahead, continue.
Go ahead and tell us what you want the court to consider, please.
Yes, ma'am. I was heading east on Pawnee Road, approaching Andover Road, and I did come to a stop sign. I believed I did stop at the stop sign, and there is also a stop.
Stop! Wait, you believed you stopped at a stop sign? You believed. Not that you did, or I know I did, Your Honor. I believe I stopped at a stop sign. That's like, a husband telling his wife, honey, I believe I took out the garbage. Really? Then why are the fucking cans sitting right over here? That thing. Not good, but we'll continue.
Up line, I stopped well behind both of those. After I looked left, I could see clearly left. I could not see right. After I came to a complete stop, I did proceed slowly forward until I could see to the right of the tree row. Once I saw that, it was clear. I proceeded to turn right on Andover Road. I came to a complete stop. I did edge forward after I came to a complete stop before I turned, but it was also very, very slow and cautiously. Officer Entz pulled me over, said that he observed me not stopping at the stop sign, and as you can see clearly on the photos that I sent you, the stop sign is 10, 15 feet back from the intersection, and it's from where Officer Entz was sitting, impossible for him to see whether I stopped at the stop sign or the stop line.
Let's hold up a minute on those photos. Ashley, do you have those where you can screen share them by chance? think they're in the file.
While we're waiting, I would just like to add that Officer Ince was also very polite. He did say that he stopped me for not stopping at a stop sign, and I did at that time inform him that I did stop. I believe that I did stop. Once he said a second time that he observed me not stopping, I wasn't going to argue with him, so I just, at that point, I said okay.
I can screen share them if I need to.
Okay, Missy, are you prepared to do that now? Oh, okay, it looks like Ashley.
I think I have. Do you guys see them?
Yes, very well.
Okay.
All right, so Mr. Hood, we now have your photos available, a series of 5 photos. It looks like it's a white truck parked at a stop sign. You want to go ahead and tell us why you have these pictures here? You've told us a little bit, but on a picture-by-picture basis. If you want to go ahead.
Did we lose him?
Sorry, I had muted myself. Yes, on this first photo here, I just shot a straight-in shot where I could see at the end of the median is where the 2 officers were sitting, and that's where I circled my wife's car, and my white truck is where the stop sign and the stop line are. It is impossible to see from where my wife's car is to see if a vehicle stops at that stop sign or that stop line.
What is the black car your wife's car, or is
The black car is just another vehicle at the corner. My wife's car is in the circle.
is it moving, or you're saying it's?
So it's sitting there as the officer's vehicle was.
Okay.
I'm trying to click on the second picture. I'm not sure.
You may need the clerk to do that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and then this is just a closer up of where the officer's vehicle is sitting, but you cannot see the stop sign in that photo. But just to give you a better idea of how far he was south of the intersection.
Okay.
I never heard a side effect of the bottom of my foot hurting from.
Now, are these pictures supposed to reflect where your truck was sitting when you stopped at the stop sign?
This is exactly where I was sitting when I stopped at the stop sign. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, this is just another view. Again, you can't see where the officer was sitting here, but just how big and how the trees are blocking the intersection, well back from the intersection. So I just basically, again, I was just getting multiple views of the stop sign and intersection.
Now, is that your wife's car there, or is that just another car coming down the road?
Another vehicle coming. Yeah, you cannot see from this angle. You cannot see where the officer was sitting.
Okay. All right, is that the last one?
I believe so.
Yes, that was the 5th photo.
All right. Any other testimony, Mr. Hood, that you want to make?
Only other than, again, I told Officer Ince that I believed I stopped the stop sign, and then I proceeded carefully and cautiously, and then as my wife believed I did too, and then as the day proceeded, I kept going, I know I stopped at that stop sign, so we decided to go back to the intersection and saw that basically where he was sitting, it'd be impossible for him to see it. So I decided I was going to take photos and contest it, ma'am. I have nothing further.
All right. Cross-examination, Mr. Regier.
Nothing further from the state, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Hood, any further evidence?
No, ma'am.
All right. Mr. Regier, any rebuttal evidence?
No rebuttal evidence, Your Honor.
Very well. Both parties have rested. Are there any closing arguments?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Please proceed.
Your Honor, this is a textbook example of what not to do. Pursuant to KSA 8-1528, subsection B, quote, except when directed to proceed by a police officer, every driver of a vehicle approaching a stop sign shall stop at a clearly marked stop line, but if none, or entering the crosswalk on the nearest side of the intersection, or if none, then at the point nearest the intersecting roadway, where the driver has a view of approaching traffic on the intersecting roadway before entering it. The officer has testified that he never spoke to the defendant before the stop, that the officer routinely patrols this area, as well as the fact that there was a passenger in this vehicle. The defendant was driving the Dodge. The defendant approached the stop sign. While he may have stopped at the stop sign itself, the fact remains is that by the defendant's own exhibits, this is a road that has some trees in view. While he may claim that Officer Entz did not have his vehicle in view when he stopped at the stop sign, there is the flip side that while there may have been trees in view, the defendant could not have seen any incoming traffic, and the statute specifically refers to or if none, then at a point nearest the intersecting roadway where the driver has a view of approaching traffic on the intersecting roadway before entering. The defendant was driving the Dodge. Again, he failed to comply with the letter of the law at this intersection of 120th Street and Butler Road. And as a driver of a vehicle, he is expected to obey the rules of the road. Here, the defendant clearly failed to do so, and he must be held accountable for his actions.
Dude, this is only a stop sign. You do not have to like we're convicting a felon here. But still, yeah, he does have to stop. Alright, let's hear the defense guy give his own summation.
Regier, this is pretty much the same, or very similar to one we had last week. I don't recall if it did or did not have a stop line, but is this a stop line I'm looking at here in this photograph? That white line running through there?
It appeared there is one, Your Honor, but again, this is a situation where it's not merely a matter of observing a line, it's also being mindful of incoming traffic.
All right. Mr. Hood, any closing argument?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Regier said several times that in lieu of a stop sign or a stop line, then you must stop in a clear area. There is obviously a stop sign and a stop line, which I did stop at, and then I did proceed cautiously. I did keep traffic in mind as I proceeded to the as I proceeded to the intersection. That is all, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, before the judge gets there, Dale, I hate to say this, but I may side for the defendant here. Weird, but let's continue.
Well, the violation is alleged 8-1528, stop signs and yield signs, duties of drivers, preferential right-of-way, may be indicated by stop signs or yield signs as authorized in KSA 8-2008 and amendments thereto. And the 2008 statute addresses erection and maintenance of stop signs, yield signs, and traffic control devices, citing that the Secretary of Transportation, with reference to state highways and local authorities with reference to highways under their jurisdiction, may erect and maintain stop signs, yield signs, or other official traffic control devices to designate through highways or to designate intersections or other roadway junctions at which vehicular traffic on one or more of the roadways shall yield or stop and yield before entering the intersection of the junction. So that's the cross-reference to that 8-2008. So preferential right-of-way may be indicated by stop sign or yield signs as authorized by 2008. And then it goes on to say in section B, except when directed to proceed by a traffic police officer. Well, we didn't have an officer out there directing traffic, so that doesn't apply. But except for an officer's directing, except when directed to proceed by a police officer, every driver of a vehicle approaching a stop sign shall stop at a clearly marked stop line. Now, if I am to accept the defendant's testimony and his exhibits, he is clearly stopped behind the line. And these photographs, which he tells me are representative of where he stopped the day September 2nd, 2022. Statute goes on to say, but if not, then before entering the crosswalk, or if none, meaning if no crosswalk, then at the point nearest the intersecting roadway where the driver has a view of approaching traffic on their intersecting roadway before entering it.
Makes me think that he's going to get off here. Because it keeps saying, but if none. But if he's true that there was one, then, well, the but if none wouldn't apply.
After having stopped, the driver shall yield the right-of-way to any vehicle in the intersection or approaching on another roadway so closely as to constitute an immediate hazard during the time when such driver is moving across or within the intersection or junction of the roadways. The driver shall yield the right-of-way to pedestrians. Well, pedestrians don't apply to this case. The difficulty for the court in this particular case is you do have a stop line. And the defendant's argument is, I stopped behind the stop line, therefore I didn't violate the statute. I yielded at the stop sign. But as I understand Mr. Regeer's argument, we have 2 points here. We have a stop line for the defendant to stop behind, but we also have this row of trees, and the stop line is behind the row of trees. There's no stop line out in front of the row of trees to protect the motorists coming and going on these roadways. Therefore, that provision, in order to provide the safety that is intended by this stop sign, the driver would have to follow that part of the statute that says you are to stop at the point nearest the intersecting roadway where the driver has a view of approaching traffic. That would have to be out there just a little bit past that tree, but not into the roadway. Otherwise, you would not be able to see approaching traffic. And if you didn't stop at that point, you could run right into oncoming traffic. Defendant said, well, I kind of rolled out there to make sure I was safe and then proceeded. He admits he didn't stop at that portion of the roadway beyond the trees so that he could see if the traffic was clear, but rather he rolled through it. So I'm just struggling that I have two different parts of the statute that looks like it lends itself to this situation. One, the parked behind the stop sign, but he didn't yield or stop out there where it's safe at the trees to make sure nobody was coming. I think I heard very conflicting testimony though as to what the officer could see. The officer testified that regardless of which way the truck was parked, it didn't stop. In other words, the officer said, basically contradicted the defendant's testimony. Defendant says, I stopped behind the stop sign and slowly and cautiously approached the highway. But that's not what the officer testified to. He said he was parked where he could see the stop sign
I don't believe
from
that's what he
his
said, Your Honor.
mirrors.
You could see
That
the
would have put him in
intersection.
a different location than what Mr. Hood said the officer was in, because if the officer was parked where Mr. Hood said he was, I don't think the officer could have seen behind the trees. I don't think he could have known whether or not Mr. Hood stopped behind the stop line. If he was parked where Mr. Hood said he was, he should have been able to tell if he stopped at the point nearest the intersection to make sure the traffic was clear. But the bottom line that helps this court make its decision is that the officer did testify that he was sitting where he could see the stop sign, and that the defendant did not stop at the stop sign or at the tree line. So I think that regardless of which part of the statute one applies to these facts, if one is to believe the officer's testimony, he could see the stop sign and therefore the defendant did not stop. And I do find that the defendant's testimony, that the officer's testimony is credible, and I am convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that the officer did see what he thought he saw, what he said he saw under oath, and that the defendant did not stop. I'm not saying that the defendant is not being truthful, because the defendant frankly wasn't sure if he stopped or not. And he and his wife talked about, well, I'm pretty sure I stopped. I know I stopped at that. But the very fact that he's having to work it through his mind and go back and look at it to help him decide if he stopped suggests to this court that he wasn't clear in his own mind that he stopped. He had to go back and convince himself he stopped, whereas the officer from the very beginning was adamant that he could see the stop sign and that the defendant didn't stop, and that's why he gave him the ticket. And the officer went on to testify that this is a stop sign, a traffic area with significant problems, and that he or his department watches it closely. So at this time, I am going to find the defendant guilty. Of course, this decision is appealable. You have up to 14 days, Mr. Hood, to appeal to the Kansas Court of Appeals if you wish to appeal. The fine is $75. Court costs are $108 for a total of $183. If you want to pay that today, you can. If you need some time, I can give that to you. Do you need some time, Mr. Hood?
Ma'am, I would like to appeal.
All right. If you want to appeal, you'll have the duty of doing that. You're going to have to post an appeal bond. I'm going to make that a $200 appeal bond to cover the cost of the fine and I'll make it $183. $183, the cost of the ticket, and the court costs, you'll have to pay those when you file your appeal as bond in this case, appeal bond. But you have 14 days to perfect that appeal, sir. It's not just enough to file the notice, you have to perfect the appeal.
What does that mean, Your Honor?
Now that means you have to proceed with your appeal and actually file the appeal, not just the notice that you intend to.
Yes, ma'am.
And you'll need to appeal that or file that bond, like I said, at the time you file your notice. Okay. Anything further at this time?
Who do I contact and how do I go about appealing, ma'am?
Well, I can't give you a lot of legal advice. You have to, if you're going to represent yourself in the appeal, you'll have to make yourself familiar with the appeal process and procedures.
Will do.
The notice of appeal is filed with the clerk of the district court. But again, it's not enough just to file a notice. You have to follow through with it, with all the procedures that will entail.
Yes, ma'am.
So going to do that on your own, you need to, again, know how to do that.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, if there's nothing further, we will be in recess on the Hood matter. You may go, Mr. Hood. You may go.
Ma'am,
Enns? Yes? Who was that?
ma'am, this is Deputy Enns.
Yes, Deputy Enns.
If I could clarify, I was actually...
Ooh, hold on a minute. We might have a light breaking change of this.
at that intersection today, due to the statute being a failure to yield at the stop sign, every time that I stop somebody at that intersection, that I did twice today, I tell them you failed to properly yield at the stop sign. Because if they didn't stop once they get past the trees and they could see in both directions, it was an improper. So I agree with Mr. Hood. From that point, I can't see the stop line and the sign, and I must have misspoke with you today if that's what you believe. But I can see where he needs to stop prior to proceeding. Does that make sense, ma'am?
Your Honor?
So, are you asking me to reconsider and open the case for new evidence?
I just wanted to clarify my position on it because I didn't believe that I said I probably spoke it that way due to the fact that it is the not stopping at a stop sign statute, and the statute reads, if you can't clearly see them both, as you guys have already quoted. So the proper area to stop that you were discussing would be where he can properly see traffic in both directions. When I can see that he can see in both directions based off of where I was sitting, where his wife's car was circled in the picture.
Is that where you were sitting, Deputy Enns?
That is where I was sitting, ma'am.
So you couldn't have seen the stop
I can see the stop sign, but it's a failure to stop at the stop sign citation for not stopping where you can clearly see both directions prior to proceeding.
Okay, so you couldn't see the stop sign, you couldn't see the stop line, you cannot swear that he did not stop behind the stop sign or the stop line, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. All I can do is swear that per the last section of the statute that you talked about, where it says you have to stop where you can properly see any kind of traffic. I can know that there was no stop when all I see is the nose of a vehicle come past the trees and never come to a complete stop.
All right, so the statute says stop behind the stop line if there is no stop line. Deputy Regier, you agree that's what it says?
That would appear to comport with a plain reading of the statute, Your Honor.
And there was clearly a stop line in this case, correct?
Assuming the court is accepting the defendant's pictures, there does appear to be one a few feet roughly in front of the stop line, notwithstanding the tree line.
Okay, but I didn't hear anybody object to those photographs, so they were considered admitted. So you have to stop behind the stop line. It's only if there isn't a stop line that you have to stop behind the crosswalk, right?
I might get this. I might be right after all.
Statute 8-1528B, Mr. Regier?
The word of the statute is, or if none, but for the fact that the statute does not appear to account for other hazards that might potentially be in place, as is clearly the case in these photos.
Well, it does take into consideration intersections where the driver doesn't have a view of approaching traffic on the intersecting roadway before entering it. It addresses that, doesn't it?
It does, but it is preceded by language that says, or if none, with respect to the clearly marked stop line or the crosswalk in the same statute.
Well, let's just read it word for word. except when directed to proceed by a police officer. Every driver of a vehicle approaching a stop sign shall stop at a clearly marked stop line, but if none, meaning but if there's no stop line, then he has to stop, quote, before entering the crosswalk on the near side of the intersection. Or, if none, end quote, and inserting, so if there's a stop line, he has to stop behind it. If there's not a stop line, he has to stop behind the crosswalk. If and only if there's neither one of those two, quote, then at that point nearest the intersecting roadway.
I think I may be right here.
Where the driver has a view of approaching traffic on the intersecting roadway before entering it. So isn't that saying that third portion, then at the point nearest the intersecting roadway, come into play only if he doesn't have a stop line and only if he doesn't have a crosswalk, Mr. Revere?
That would appear to be the plain reading of the statute. Never, at least insofar as the final point regarding where the driver has a view of approaching traffic. But nevertheless, by the defendant's own pictures, there is the matter of the trees that are already in place, which by the defendant's own allegations would impede a view of incoming traffic.
Now, I don't think he's actually as much, I'm not sure if you're actually arguing he didn't stop or he didn't yield. But yielding doesn't really come into play because there wasn't anybody to come down the road to yield
Correct.
for.
I think he's getting off.
Stopped, which the defendant claims he did,
Right.
and the deputy says he can't tell whether, now he tells me.
I'm sorry, my sister walked back in. Let me go ahead and quick synopsis her. She ruled against him, told him he had to pay. He said he wanted to appeal, so he told her to appeal officer. Right before they close out the Zoom, the officer speaks up, going, Your Honor,
Okay.
I want to just make sure that I don't believe I ever said that, yes, I could see the stop sign, and you sound like you're saying that I did.
That he can't tell whether the defendant stopped or not, that the defendant very well may have, as he said, stopped behind the stop sign or behind the stop line. So after having stopped, then the driver shall yield the right-of-way to any vehicle in the intersecting or approaching on another roadway so close as constitute an immediate hazard during the time when such driver is moving across or within the intersection or junction of the roadways. So if he had stopped, he still had the duty to pull up cautiously and make sure he yielded for
Which
anyone
he's saying
coming.
he did.
And if he had stopped behind the stop sign and didn't yield and plowed into somebody, he clearly would be guilty of the violation of statute. I think we all would agree with that.
Right, but he went in. There was no one there. He continued.
Did he have a duty to stop a second time? That's the question. If no one was coming, did he have a duty to stop again after the hedgerow? Because, Mr. Regier, your case, you can't prove, and your officers told me this, you can't prove that he didn't stop at the stop sign or the yield sign. So the question becomes, did he have a duty to stop a second time at the hedgerow?
Was he required by law to do so?
If nobody was coming. What do you think about that, Mr. Regier? I'm not trying to stump you. Just my interpretation of the statute is troubling to me. That
Speakity mix,
Your Honor, like I stated, I did stop, and then I did proceed cautiously.
Hey, you're winning. Shut up.
As
Judge Judy likes to say, you're winning. Shut up. Do I need your help?
Exactly what you said. You made your case very clear, and I appreciate that.
So you're winning now. Shut up.
But now that the officer has told me he couldn't see whether you stopped,
We're
at the stop
asking
sign
the
or
plaintiff, not you.
intersection, I feel like I'm going to have to reverse my opinion because I don't read the statute to say that you have to stop and yield to somebody that's not there. Now, I've always operated under the same belief personally as a driver that Deputy Entz and Mr. Regier is pointing out.
That is not in the law.
I do remember my driver's ed teacher saying you have to park behind the stop sign. But I also remember that you have to slowly and cautiously pull out and yield to anybody coming.
But no one was coming.
But what it sounds like the argument from the state is he had a duty to stop again a second time at the roadway, even though no one was coming. So if I'm missing something here, Mr. Regier, I welcome your argument. But just reading over this statute, it just looks to me like the state is making an argument for a second stop that isn't anticipated in the statute. So I will definitely be studying this more because, as Deputy Entz said, we've got a couple of those roadways that seem to get more attention than others, and probably because they're more dangerous, and probably because the stop sign is in the wrong spot, maybe. Maybe that stop sign or that stop line needs to be moved out. I think there lies our issue. The stop sign and stop line, or stop sign and stop line,
Are not in the
are
right
helpful
spot.
where they're located. I mean, looking at these pictures,
But he can't be
stopping
held
behind that
against
stop
that for
sign,
that.
literally behind the sign of the stop line, makes no useful purpose. You need to be up there where you can see what's happening. So maybe that sign needs to be moved out there with the hedge or with the tree line.
Well, the trees need to be cut back.
That too. But the trees are
You may
probably on private
recall,
property and the
I
state
hinged my
doesn't have the right
decision
on that.
the officer being able to see he didn't stop, and I appreciate
Under blocking out, they
the
can
integrity of the officer
the power
and the
line.
candor of the officer to make sure that the court didn't misunderstand his evidence. I applaud the officer for being so
Correct.
conscientious and credible.
You know, come back in
So,
now.
all right, if there's nothing further, I reverse my decision and find the defendant not guilty.
Yay! See, not every case we have here is where the guy loses. All right, with that, we're going to bring the afternoon to a close. Come on back tonight where we'll have a stop sit for you. Hopefully, maybe Radrick will come out with something for us. Till then, like, share, and subscribe. Be kind to one another and release to Krakens as we march along this afternoon and every afternoon here from day one. Have a great afternoon. I get to smile because we actually have a defendant who won for once. We'll see you tonight.